Welcome to video 6 of exercise 9 in chapter 5 of the Advanced GIS textbook. In this video, we are going to be looking at comparing green space as expressed through NDVI through time in Springville, Utah parks, and applying some custom labeling as well as doing some comparisons through time of how green space and surface temperatures are related, and what this might say about how parks have changed in Springville through time, just realizing that this is all very perspective and kind of a snapshot of a particular day in July from 2010 and 2025. So here we have Springville and the 2010 NDVI output, where green is showing relatively healthy vegetation and yellow and red's not vegetation, most likely impervious surfaces like roads, highways, and parking lots, and maybe roofs. Okay, so the parks are shown with these polygons in town, and we can see that some of them are very clearly green and healthy, others maybe not. And so we're going to look at NDVI, and we've done that by bringing in those zonal statistics in the attribute table for 2010, 2025, and we've even classified things as healthy, questionable, or unhealthy. And I've also brought in temperature values for 2010 and 2025 into the table. Wasn't shown in the video, but did it the same way using zonal statistics. And then I calculated temperature deviation from the entire area, not just parks. And so this is showing a temperature deviation in degrees as either below the average temperature or above the average temperature for 2010 and 2025. So that's what we're working with. And we can make some, I'm going to delete some things that I made before. So right off, maybe we want to emphasize where these parks are. And so just remember that we can always label the parks. And that's the default labeling shown there. Not every park seems to have a name, interestingly. And sometimes that can be because there is no name, or perhaps it's just not meeting the rules. So I'm curious what park that one is that's not named right here. So if we go and select it, so we go to map, select. So that is named. There's actually two features. There's a space between the park. So that's Dry Creek Parkway, and it's a park. It's actually not quite a park, which I guess is why it's separated. It's green space, and it occupies a fairly big area, and it may not be complete. Okay, cool. So labeling is really helpful in, of course, cartographic outputs. And it can be tricky. Like, do you really, at certain scales, is this how you want things to look? Maybe not. And we might want to label things for certain outputs in different ways. Maybe we want to know more than what is the name of the park. We could also add in attributes of the park. So how do we do that, and what way might we want to add? So let's think a little bit about the relationship between green space in these parks through time. So this was 2010 that we're looking at here. And so most things are green where there are parks, but there are some exceptions. So Contractor, Civic, Legacy, Central Park, not very green. That says it's not complete, so that makes sense. And so I'm curious, like if we look at the ones that are not complete, they're also perhaps, well, some are pretty green, but maybe they're not very green. And if we look over at Veg 2010, it's unhealthy, unhealthy, unhealthy. One says healthy. And then in 2025, it says questionable and then healthy. And so, yeah, so this was incomplete as 2025, and so it makes sense. But then if we look up above, there's also questionable parks and unhealthy parks in the past as well. But definitely the most of the unhealthy ones are those that were not complete. So that makes good sense. Okay, what benefits does this green space provide us? So if we look and sort ascending by healthy and questionable and unhealthy, and then if we look over nearby the healthy parks, if we just highlight healthy parks and then look at the temperature statistics, oops. So yeah, so of the 9 that we have, temperature deviation 2010 is generally below the average temperature for the scene. There's some variability. In one case, one goes 3 degrees above average. But generally, the healthy parks are cooler. And that's for 2010. And if we go to the unhealthy ones, we can see that they're all warmer. And there is one unquestionable healthy place that was actually quite a bit cooler, but generally those are all warmer. And so the healthy green space in 2010 clearly provides a cooling benefit for surfaces. If we do the same thing here in 2025, we see that there's more that were qualified as healthy. I'll highlight those. Oops. And if we look at that temperature deviation, almost all of those are negative temperature deviations, so cooler than typical. The questionable ones, the only one that's negative is the same park that was cooler in 2010, but also, well, it was healthy in 2010, but questionable in 2025. And so that one, just highlight, is called Community Park, and it's shown right there. If I turn on NDVI 2025, it's questionable because it seems like a lot of it's green, but there's a little area that's maybe become developed in that community park with some facilities that are giving it a kind of mixed signal, and that has had a temperature effect of about a little over a degree by that change. But the area outside of that is definitely healthy. And so there's a definite correlation. If we have healthy vegetation, we have lower temperatures. And we can look at this another way. We can always make plots right here in ArcGIS Pro, or you could export the data and work in something else like R or Excel. But let me just show you some ways that we can make charts here. If we want to look at multivariate statistics, or in this case, just 2 variables, scatter plot, we can do that. And that's a good one to be utilizing. Don't use bar charts when you're looking at 2 variables. We want to use scatter plots. So we could look at the relationship between NDVI in 2010 and the temperature deviation in 2010. And And there we go. We can show that linear trend line as well. Just close this. So look at that. So if we were to say that we called it 0.3 and above is healthy, once we get over 0.3, most of these are around either a neutral temperature deviation or negative or cooler. And we can see generally the trend is as you get higher NDVI or more vegetation, you get cooler. And there's a relationship there that's fairly strong. We could do that same plot for 2025. So you can just go create another chart. It's going to produce another one for us. So we can keep that open. So there's 2025 NDVI and temperature deviation. This one seems to be even steeper. Generally, it looks like 2025 has higher values of NDVI, and yeah, generally cooler temperature deviations. But I should note that if we were to plot relative to raw temperature, it's actually quite a bit warmer in the 2025 scene. And so the vegetation's effect is seen more, perhaps because it was a warmer day. Yeah, and so that, that tells us something as well, right? That the benefits of that vegetation is enhanced at higher temperatures for the community. So these plots would be quite useful for looking at the impact of greenness in parks. And then if we were to compare, I guess we could make a table, right, of different parks and their greenness through time. Or you could plot two side-by-side maps where you kind of look and see that this one that's labeled park is not so good in 2025, was quite good in 2010. 2025, the Civic Center is quite green, but not in 2010. And this may be because some of these parks are newer and weren't even there in 2010. And so we'd want to add into that table things like the age of the park when it was created. Okay, so these can all be quite useful. We could also make plots of labels like we were talking about before. Okay, so how can we customize our labels? So we've got some labels, maybe we don't like the way they're showing up here. There's quite a bit that we can do to adjust that. So if we right click and go to labeling properties, right now the expression is just the feature name, feature.name. Name is the attribute that's showing up for that feature. And the park's name is nice. We probably want that. There's questions about, do we want the park name inside of the feature, given the size of these parks? Perhaps not. We can work on that. But we can also add things to what's shown here. So to add things, it's a little bit weird in here. At least in the arcade language, we use a plus, and then we kind of bring in, if we want to like type our own stuff, we would put a quote and say feature name. And then if we wanted to, so after feature name plus a quote means that we're adding string of text. And if I put a space in, it's going to give a space and then a parenthesis. And then I'm going to end the quote. So we're going to have that space and parenthesis there, and then I could add like whatever I wanted. How big is the park, right? So if I did that, then I would put another quote and a parenthesis and a quote, And that should give me the acres of, oh, something's wrong here. Let's see, hold on. Error on line, semicolon, or new line expected. No. Let's see, what did I do wrong here? So plus, oh, okay. So after the quote, we need to also have a plus, and then we need a plus here. So it's really annoying, right? So you have the feature name plus a string, so something, some text that you're going to write, plus another thing, acres, and then plus another string. So we didn't need that. And now the expression is valid. And now we get the parentheses with the acres. If you wanted it to say acres, we would add that in here and then say apply. And we could add in other things, like if we don't want to have all those digits, you could round those acres off. So before the feature acres, we would type round in parentheses, and then how many digits we want to round it to, say 3, for that acres. And then we get a little bit less information, so it's a little bit more manageable. Maybe we only want 2 decimal places. We could adjust that. And if we have some inconsistencies, right? Maybe we want that parentheses to show up on the next line. If that's the case, before that parentheses, after that first plus, we would say text formatting dot new line, and then another plus, and I could hit a return just so it's clear, and then apply. Now everything is on the next line. Not everything is on exactly 2 lines, and some of the ways things are displayed are a little bit inconsistent in terms of how the name is written. So there's other ways to format. So we've got this formatting in here, but we can change things in here. So we could change the size. If you want it to be bigger, they get bigger. If you want to change the font, etc. You can enable scale-based sizing over. So I believe that's when it might be not shown outside of these scales, and then it'll change in size with those scales. So we click apply. It should change the scale as we zoom in and out. We click that off and click apply. Now it's still changing the name with scale. Yeah, so it's not it's not doing exactly what I thought it would. So let's not worry about that for right now. If we go to position, you can choose like where you want these symbols to show up. Right now it's horizontal, so depending on the map orientation, and it's going to go within the polygon. If you want it to be it'll be oriented within the polygons along the long axis of the polygon in this situation. Curved within the polygon, if there's a, that's kind of weird for this type of thing. Horizontal, not in the polygon, but on the edge of the polygon somewhere might be a better choice. And that looks much better, but still not perfect, right? With different scales of maps. So if we go back to symbology, and if we get it to the scale that we want it, so say we were going to produce a map at this scale, and then we go back to symbols, I think we specify a smaller font here, should go to that. If we went to like 20, it's obviously going to be huge. 10, it's okay. Don't know about that. Okay, so there's some other things that we could, there's so many things really that you could format. You could choose to indent the first line. You can choose to make things, I believe, centered or not. And so you have a lot of options in here. So yeah, position alignment is here, but I can't quite click on centering there for some reason. Perhaps something I have selected is stopping that. You can also make some offsets. X and Y. Oh, it's not allowing me to do that. Why? Oh, perhaps this is because of my particular type of placement. And so there may be some rules about this. Right now we have it on regular placement. There's different styles for labeling land parcels, rivers, boundaries, and then can do even more things, right? So what do you deal with overruns? Things like that. So you have tons of options. And you could spend a whole day working on this. And so I'll say a few things about that. So one, you can clearly do everything that you might want to do right here in ArcGIS Pro. Another option is to export the map that you want to make without the labels, and then use another graphics program to custom add on the labels. And that might be fine in certain situations, right? In this case, it would be fine. There's only like 20 something to deal with. But if you were labeling all the parks in a giant poster-sized map of Utah, that's not something you would want to do unless you're going to publish that, in a major kind of thing that's going to be printed a bunch of times. If you're just doing something like that for a class, that's probably too much. You better ought to figure out how to automate it right here. I'm sure that there's going to be some add-ons and artificial intelligence to help with this soon. I don't know about them yet. Okay, so let's go back. What else can we add into this? So can we add in things that would be maybe more useful to assessing benefits of temperature or something like that? So if we wanted to change what we're viewing, instead of viewing NDVI, we could go say view surface temperature, right? And then we see the parks, and we could change what we're showing. We could say, let's in here say show, instead of feature acres, let's show the NDVI. This was 2010. Rounded to 2 decimal places maybe is fine. And now we need to definitely get rid of the acres. There's no units on NDVI. And instead, maybe we want to say that it is NDVI colon. And we might want to say the year. And so now we're looking at maybe we didn't need to say the year because we could make a map that the title is 2010. And so that would make it a little simpler. So now we can see like the temperature anomaly benefit of the park with healthy vegetation, 0.36, right? 0.3, 0.34, all these 0.3s are kind of cooler. We can see it's a hot area, but near park there, it's quite cool. Yeah, so it really emphasizes some of these benefits, although not, right, where we're below 0.3. And so that make a compelling figure. And you could do the same thing if you wanted for 2025 but in this case you'd want to change your feature to NDVI 2025. Click apply. The numbers change, and also the temperature anomalies are different. Yeah, so there's lots of things we could show, but hopefully this shows you some of the ways you can customize your labeling, and you can really add on here. You could make lots of detailed labels. Of course, it can get pretty messy if you do that. And there's more functionality, right? So you can make, you can add in multiple labels from different attributes within your attribute table. You could modify their formats quite a few different ways in here. And there's more choices, right? So if we go to Python, let's see, it's still it's showing us what that expression would be in here. Interesting. Oh no, yeah, so it didn't work, right? It got rid of a bunch of the things. So you'd have to figure out how to do that same thing in Python. And so I don't know exactly how to do that right off the top of my head. So this stuff is, this could be a good utilization for asking AI to help you with writing some of these codes, or just Googling around and seeing what people do. But once you see the kind of formatting that you want to follow, you can see the patterns and work from there. So here, I'll go back to Arcade, and it's ruined my formatting. So I'm going to paste in another thing. So this is now feature name, and then we're going to add in what park class it is. Apply that. So medium, small, micro, and then I've got 2025 status of vegetation, questionable, unhealthy, for the other one. So I could get rid of 2010. So since we're looking only at temperature from so now we see healthy vegetation and we see the temperature anomaly there. So yeah, you can add in quite a bit, right? And so this is a little bit different. And so custom labeling with some small amounts of kind of scripting in different language formats will help you label with detail. And then you can make lots of basic plots right here in ArcGIS, and you can export data to make really nice tables as well that would compare the impacts of these different factors of green space on temperature with time and parks. Okay, so that's video number 6, and that concludes the video tutorials for this example 9. So I hope that helps you with Lab 5 in your class, and yeah, happy GISing.